I see my man in the background. The man, the legend, Garland Nixon. How you doing, man? You doing okay this morning?
Great talking to you, man. I watch your shows. Believe it or not, I watch your shows every day. Not necessarily in the morning, but over the course of the day, I'm always checking out your stuff.
Well, I appreciate
great
that.
Work. Yeah, your show's great.
There are days where it's better than others, but yeah, I try my best.
So it's kind of like my back. There are days when it's better, but I try my best.
Yeah, they're right. It's like there are days where I can go out and play some basketball. There are other days I'm just laid on the bed. Yeah, that's just life, right? It just happens that way. No, man, I'm glad you could join me. Garland Nixon, radio show host, political analyst. He hosts the Garland Nixon show. He has shows all the time. I don't think you have a set schedule for those shows.
No.
So I'm just going to say all the time. So definitely check out his channel in order to see his content. He is fantastic. He is an awesome guest, and he is an awesome show. Garland, I wanted to hit with you. I had pulled up. I'm slightly discombobulated. One of my guests wasn't able to show up because of stuff that was going on. But, I know what it was. There are a few things. One of the things had to do with the ICE raids that have been taking place. Now, we hit this once before, but this is amazing to me that this is legal. Like, they are beating up kids in schools. They are threatening Americans, like with physical force, if not pointing guns. There are reports of them pointing guns into people's face, effectively saying stuff like, I'll kill you, liberal. Krista Ball recently pointed out that they were hiring for ICE, and you can imagine that they were flooded with all sorts of racists and fascists that wanted to be part of the government to go after immigrants because they were given this notion of license by the Trump administration, effectively do whatever the hell they wanted. And the reporting on this, it goes both ways, right? When you present ICE and say, hey, look at all the stuff that these guys are doing where they seem lawless. Well, you get a lot of people who are fascists like, hey, we like that. Let's get into that. Whew, where can I sign up? And many of these people are overweight. They don't have the IQ necessary to do the job. Even in an open book test, they're flunking it. But this is a disaster to me. And it is terrifying on some level because it's almost like this is a military unto itself that doesn't seem to be under U.S. law in the way that the law operates under normal circumstances, at least by cops. Like, it doesn't even seem to be functional in the context of cops, right? It seems to be their own gray space that they exist and operate in. I don't quite get how this is legal.
Well, I'll say this. What we're seeing now is the deterioration of the illusion of our government abiding by the law. I could go back and I could say, you know what, when they lied us into this war or that war or whatever, I could go to any, clearly the 1991 with the whole, what was it? Babies being thrown out of incubators thing was illegal. The government went out and hired a PR firm to cook up a lie that they knew was a lie. They brought this person into Congress knowing that they would lie, paying for them to lie, and lied us into a war, right? So clearly they had no regard for the truth, and Congress never held them accountable, right? So here's my point. I can go way back and I can say the empire by necessity lies constantly and pays absolutely no attention to the law that we supposedly are held accountable for. What we're seeing as the empire deteriorates is that illusion, because they maintain the illusion that they're going by law and international law. We must go after this country. Why? Because they're violating international law, right? What we're seeing as the empire deteriorates is the evaporation of that illusion. Now they're just like, what the hell? Who cares about law anymore? Let's not even try to maintain the facade that we go by the law. Let's just do whatever the hell we want to do externally. Oh, wait a minute. There's some fishermen going by on the boats. Hey, you know what? We want to steal the oil in Venezuela. Let's just say they were drug dealers or something. We'll blow the boat up and kill them all. And we'll in international waters where we have no jurisdiction. And when people say that's a violation of the international law, we'll just go, we can do what we want. Nobody can stop us. Externally. And internally, you would only expect the same thing. The analogy that I've used is that you got a guy who goes to a bar and he gets in a fight over stupid stuff. Then on the way home, he's involved in an argument because he thinks some guy cut him off in a stop sign. He jumps in the car and he gets in a fight with that guy. Then he's walking up the street and he's, hey, you looking at me? He gets in a fight. This is a psychopathic guy, you know, the type that gets in fights with everybody. He's always looking for a fight. What do you think he's going to go do when he gets home to his wife and kids? He's going to smack his wife and beat his kids because his nature is one of anger and violence. Whatever he does in the street, that's what the hell he's going to do home, right? Well, when you look at the empire, and you say, look what they're doing, just brazenly slaughtering and murdering innocent fishermen and people. They don't even know who they are. It only stands to reason that when they come home, they're going to kick the dog, smack the wife, and beat the hell out of the kids. This is what we're seeing, an empire that is out of control, that has no whatsoever concern about law. There is no accountability. Where are the Democrats? What the hell are they even doing? Are they saying, don't do this? This is illegal? In the same way that the Democrats should be going berserk. What are you doing? You're lying us into a war. You're doing what George W. Bush did in Iraq. Instead of weapons of mass destruction, now it's fentanyl and drug deal. We know it's a lie, and we know you want to steal the oil. Everybody knows that. But where are the Democrats? Well, maybe it's a good idea to go to Venezuela and steal the oil. We must stop Maduro. Right. So they're going along with the lies just like they did all along. And I think what we're seeing is it will get worse as they are desperate now for control to regain, in the same way that they're desperate to regain control economically and hegemonically of the world. We got to steal oil. We got to do this. We got to make these people do what we're going to say, what we want all around the world. At home, they're losing control. They're desperate to regain control, so they could care less about the law anymore. That stuff's out the window. They'll do whatever the hell they please, and they could care less whether we like it or not.
That's disturbing. That's very disturbing. And it just the fitness thing, I found it. So it says right here, it turns out that a third of the new recruits that have been hired are reporting to the academy are so out of shape that they're washing out of the physical fitness tests. As Atlantic's Nick Muroff, who's doing some of the best current reporting on the unfolding debacle, reported, quote, more than a third have failed so far, 4 officials told me, impeding the agency's plan to hire, train, and deploy 10,000 deportation officers by January. To pass, recruits must be able to do 15 push-ups, 32 sit-ups, and run 1.5 miles in 14 minutes. And here's another one, lowering hiring standards for poorly checked. It says, for those who do pass the physical training, it's also not going well. As NBC News reports, nearly half of the new recruits who arrived over the past 3 months were later sent home because they couldn't pass the written exam. According to the data, the academic textbooks and notes on the legal course on the Immigration and Nationality Act, Fourth Amendment, which outlines the officer can conduct searches and seizures. And by the way, they're able to use their books on this. So a third of them are too fat to do the job. And then when they do pass or get beyond that point, the other half are too dumb to do the job. And that's even with an open book, meaning they're looking at the book and they still can't get it right. You're like, can I just search random people? Yes. Can I lock up Americans? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I see it on TV all the time. Yes. That's amazing. Like, meaning they are just bringing in a flood of people, and the deluge of people have gotten to such an extent that they are just, it's almost as if people have seen what has been taking place, like on social media and everything else. And you have some people who are repulsed by it. They're like, oh my God, those people are Nazis. Those are guys fascists. And you have other people say, whew, that's the job for me. Those are the people that sign up. That's scary. Let's see. Sounds like our last 2 presidents. Biden was physically decrepit and brain dead. Trump, I mean, he couldn't run a block and a half, and he's not the brightest, the sharpest knife in the drawer. So, I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense. They represent our political class today. A bunch of brain dead guys who are fat and soft and out of shape. I'm in like my early 60s, and I could pass all of those tests easily. But these guys are like 20, 30 years old, and they can't do it. You know, used to run up and down the stairs. And I used
Yeah.
to be impressed by that.
But you know what we're looking at, of course it all makes sense because you know what you get, you know, I come from law enforcement and recruiting, and what you get oftentimes in these types of things are people who have more than anything else low self-esteem, and they want to go, you know, make up for that by being able to push others around and dominate and feel powerful because internally they really feel weak. So the kind of person that would want to do this is like the most dangerous kind of person that you could ever imagine. The person that would say, oh, wait a minute, I get to push people around, abuse people, beat them up, drag them away. Yes, I want to do that. The kind of person who wants to do that is the person who feels weak and they want to exhibit power. And I know from being in charge of recruiting and law enforcement, it's the worst possible person. I've seen those kind of people get hired and that never ends well, right? But the bottom line is, doesn't that kind of represent like the US? Did you see the what was it, the march in front of Trump when he had the military march and the guys were just kind of wandering all over creation? You know, I saw like the Russians and the Chinese, and they look like synchronized swimmers. You know, they're like, and then I see the Americans and they're like wandering around, kind of aimlessly stumbling into each other. Feet look like, you know, centipedes going in every different direction. What the hell is that? And that's kind of where we are right now. That's kind of the empire is a farce. It's a joke. You know, the whole thing as it falls apart becomes a farce. Our economy, our economy. It's fat and out of shape and it doesn't work anymore. Yeah. Everything about the empire is stupid. The whole discussion that our political class has is stupid. We like guys like us, we don't have like PhDs in political science or something like that. You know, we do other things, right? And we can look at what they're doing and say, but that's pretty stupid. Why would we do that? But they can't from the inside. So yeah, these are the kind of people that they'd hire. And of course, as I also think this, and a lot of me, I don't know, put on my conspiracy theory hat. Like, go for it. Duran hat, not exactly, but you get my picture. And that is, and I felt for a while, they are looking at what's going on and they're saying, look, this thing's coming apart. This thing's going to go bad. It's falling apart. And when it does, the people are going to be like in the streets, and we need a bunch of goons that'll be able to, you know, hopefully put down the protests and put down all of the things when people go berserk and they're like, hey, wait a minute, you know, my whole life savings is gone. My job's gone. Everything's gone. What the hell's going on? Our economy's crashed. It makes 2008 look like, you know, the roaring 20s. What's going on here? That they're starting to put together a goon squads. But goon squads to be able to deal. And maybe I'm just being a conspiracy theorist here, but I feel like they know this thing's going to go. We know this thing is going bad, and they're like, we better get some goon squads. That way, when people start going berserk, we can put them down. And we need some really stupid, angry, low self-esteem people to beat the crowds. So let's under the guise of immigration, we'll bring in these clowns.
So we need a bunch of dumb, fat, angry, low self-esteem clowns.
Pretty much Congress and Senate, you know. Yeah. I mean, Ted Cruz, think about it.
I don't think you're wrong. I thought, I thought the same thing, right? Like this idea that, because I don't think they're doing it for reasons, right? Mm-hmm. Like they have to have reasons for it. I don't think it's just like, yeah, I'm going to get out of bed in the morning and I'm going to get all these goons to do X and Y. It's not that. We have a plan. We may not tell you that plan, but we have an idea of what we're doing and why we're doing it. Now, it may be ultimately dumb, or it could, let's say, fit within the context of whatever they're trying to accomplish. And that could be the military in the way that Trump is trying to get the public acclimated to having military on U.S. soil. It could be these goons that he's trying to spread all throughout the United States in these various cities and everything else, just snatching Americans, snatching random people in a lawless way. By the way, on this front, if a policeman is nearby and they snatch an American, can the policeman intervene?
Well, you know, not really for this reason.
What?
Because that really,
I tell you why. Violated.
I tell you why. Because a policeman doesn't know. Okay, some ICE guy grabs a person off the street. And the policeman says no. And if that said, hey, you shouldn't do that. And if the ICE person says to the policeman, hey, we have credible evidence that this person is a illegal immigrant, and we have credible evidence that they were involved in a bank robbery and a murder and a theft and arson and all other things and blah, blah, blah. How's the policeman going to know he's lying to him? And was the policeman going to investigate on the spot? So if it would be like this, if you're a city officer, right, and state police come in and they grab some guy, and you're in a city, and state police, say Baltimore City and Maryland State Police comes in and they grab some guy, and Baltimore City says, why are you grabbing a citizen of my city? And state police says, oh, we got him. He's wanted in the, murder of something, right? Would the Baltimore City policeman be able to say to the Maryland State trooper, hey, you can't take him. You have to prove that to me? Not really. So it would put the policeman in a very difficult position that he'd have to be able to kind of prove on the spot that this ICE guy doesn't have a valid reason to be. Now, he could say, I don't know if you have a reason, but somebody would have to administratively look into it and say,
when they say, well, when you need a warrant, or a warrant applies when you go into somebody's house or somebody's car or something like that.
And keep in mind, when it's immigration, ICE, and when it is, what's the other one? The Border Patrol guys, right? Customs Service. Yep. It's different as far as new warrants needed, right? They have different laws. Customs and ICE have different laws when it comes to warrants. So I don't know. For instance, Customs, if you are, let's say you're in a boat coming up the Chesapeake Bay, and that boat is capable of going into the high seas, right? Which means you can leave the country with that boat. You're in a 50-foot sailboat. You come up the Chesapeake Bay. Customs can come and they can board that boat and they can search that boat with no warrant whatsoever, saying, well, we think you may be coming in from another country. They can search you to see if you have plants or animals. You know how they check to see if you've got some invasive species. So their laws of search and the laws of certain rules of search and seizure when it comes to Customs and ICE are different than normal. And in a way, they kind of have to be. So, but the point is they use that to their advantage when they shouldn't be using it. You know what I mean? When they know good and damn well that this sailboat doesn't have any plants or animals or something that they should be searching for Customs, but they really want to search it for drugs or something else, they use their ability to search it for plants and animals under the guise. It's unfortunate. Just like asset forfeiture and seizure laws, which are terrible. They're supposedly be used to stop drug dealers or something. The government uses that to advantage to harass, you when you're walking down the street with a pocket full of money or something, and they want to grab your money. So it's unfortunate, but that's the way it works.
What about in a situation where, let's say an ICE agent comes up on an American, and the person says, well, we think this guy's not an American. And as an American, for some reason, I have papers. I don't know. I have something to identify. Like, I have a house, I have a car, I have this, I have that. I've been here for, here's my birth certificate. Maybe I carry my birth certificate with me. I'm showing all of this stuff. And I show it to the cop. I'm saying, look, I'm an American. Protect me. What does the cop do in that situation? I mean, at this point, I've shown clear proof, positive evidence that this guy is full of it. Can the cop now get involved and say, well, look, he's obviously an American. You can't take him. You're violating his Fourth Amendment rights or whatever the number of rights are.
It gets very difficult when it comes to various law enforcement agencies interacting with each other, because the officers at the lowest level do not really have the authority to make those decisions. If an officer on the street wanted to make a decision like that, because keep in mind, that's a political decision, and with political implications, an officer on the street would then have to contact his advisor, his supervisor, who would go up the chain to, the chief of police, who the chief of police or superintendent of a police department is actually generally a political appointee. So they're a political figure. So while we could theoretically talk about the officer's legal authority to make those decisions, keep in mind something. A political officer, a police officer is in fact a representative of the government and a political figure, and the officer himself would not have the authority by his agency, wouldn't give him the authority to make that decision. They'd say, you got to run it up the chain. And the chain would say, walk away from that one. We ain't going to go to war with the federal government.
sucks.
And let me tell you why. Well, for instance, when I was with the, when we were, when we did police boats and all the Chesapeake Bay stuff and all of that, right? We got millions of dollars from Coast Guard every year. We got millions of dollars from U.S. Customs because we were on the bait and drug boats and stuff like that. Do you think a police department that gets millions of dollars with the federal government, it always comes back to money, is going to bump heads with the federal government? You know what the federal government's going to do? They're going to call and say, well, it's nice and unfortunate you have some run-ins with the ICE agents, but it would be a sad day if those millions of dollars that you get from the federal government should suddenly dry up. Not saying that it's going to happen, but in theory it could. And the chief of police would say, no problem. Oh, no. We got no problems. Do what you see what I'm saying? It always comes back to politics and money.
Garland, that sucks.
Yeah.
Because what that means is, even if you could say that if there are two cops, one cop is doing something that the cop has no business doing, another cop can step in and say, hey, stop, you're breaking the law, right? I'm going to protect the rights of this particular citizen. I've seen that take place. Rare, but I've seen it. But in this case, you're screwed. Even if you can prove without a shadow of a doubt that you're an American, and the argument that this agent is making is that this guy's a foreigner, you're still screwed. You're going in a panty wagon to wherever they're going to take you to, whatever black site they take you to.
Well, there's the issue of jurisdiction too. Because if the officers, the federal officer, an ICE agent, is enforcing federal law, and the local officer doesn't have federal jurisdiction, so it would be difficult for the local officer to even say you can or can't do that because they don't have jurisdiction over those issues, and for them to interpret it and say you can or can't do it. So you have the issue of, in other words, it's just something that a local officer wouldn't have the ability to make that decision because he doesn't have jurisdiction over federal issues. And yeah, you know what I mean? He just wouldn't have the jurisdiction to make that decision. It would have to go up to the highest levels, and then there'd have to be. And now here's the other part. Most of the time, your federal, or very oftenly, the federal agencies, like in the state of Maryland, will have an MOU, a memo of understanding with the state when it comes to how they operate in that particular state. So there's just so many political things. It's not as simple as that. There's memos of understanding between the jurisdiction and the feds as to what will happen if they have a problem, and they may have to go by that. Well, if there's a contradiction between the two agencies, it will be settled by the Attorney General's office as set forth in paragraph 5AB, blah, blah, blah. You see what I mean? It's so these things get difficult, but they're not something that an officer on a street level would be in a position to make a decision. He'd have to call his chief and say, hey, chief, look, or sergeant, really, and say, hey, Sarge, look, I think they're grabbing guys that they shouldn't grab. And then the sergeant would have to say, all right, let me call the chief. And the chief would say, let me call the mayor, or let me call the governor. They're not in a position to make those kinds of decisions.
So there's no safety.
Yeah, no. Well, people believe it. Again, let's not get under the illusion that you really have rights. The privileges. As far as the ruling elite are concerned, you have no rights. As far as the ruling, they don't recognize them as rights. They recognize them as privileges that they can revoke on any given Tuesday. Look what's happening with, do you remember what was the guy's name? He was a Chicago guy, Castilla or something. And under the Obama administration, they said, well, he's a terrorist. Therefore, he loses his constitutional rights. Well, there's nowhere in the Constitution that you can say an American loses their constitutional rights. I don't care what you call them. Well, if they can do that, then you never had them. They can't. If they can feel that they can take them on any given day, you didn't have them. You had privileges. And so we argue for rights that we never really had. They will revoke those privileges as soon as they feel like they're inconvenient, and up to and including our right to free speech. Because how can the government call Twitter and Facebook and say, you've got to suppress Jamal Thomas and Garland Nixon, which they've done, And then and just by doing end around, well, we can't shut Garland Nixon and Jamal Thomas's speech up, but we'll call Twitter and Facebook and have them act as an agent for the government to do it, which is clearly a violation of the First Amendment.
I'm glad you mentioned that. One of your favorite presidents, Barack Obama, came out and gave a speech. I want you to hear what he says. This is rather amazing. This is rather profound. And obviously it was going in this direction, but for a country with the First Amendment, this is rather profound. Listen to what Obama says.
Part of what we're going to have to do is to start experimenting with new forms of journalism and how do we use social media in ways that reaffirm facts, separate facts from opinion. We want diversity of opinion. We don't want diversity of facts. That, I think, is one of the big tasks of social media. By the way, it will require some government, I believe, some government regulatory constraints around some of these business models in a way that's consistent with the First Amendment, but that also says...
I want to point out, you can hear the liberals in the background clapping. They're like, yes, more censorship. Yes, more censorship. Let's keep going.
Look, there is a difference between these platforms letting all voices be heard versus a business model that elevates the most hateful voices or the most polarizing voices or the most dangerous in the sense of inciting violence voices. And
see, that's the rub, though, right? That's not necessarily a business model. That is just people, for better or for worse, choose it. Look, I can tell you on my channel, right? You can have somebody, and I've seen this on other channels, where the loudest voices pull or try to pull the host in a particular direction. And because the host feels like they need to be pure on some level, or whatever purity means in the context of whatever the channel is. And you can see it happen. The same thing happens on social media. The same thing happens when you're seeing all of these voices, like on Twitter, on, I don't know about Instagram or the other ones, but on Twitter, you can definitely see it. Those, I don't know if that's a business model or if those are people who are, let's say, angry about something and they click like and it bubbles up. Or you have a YouTube channel where somebody is flipping out and they're like, oh, I like the fact that guy's flipping out. It's entertaining to me. Like, in which case the thing goes up. Those are people choosing that. That's not necessarily a business model that chooses. I could be wrong on this, but or Obama may make the argument of, well, the business model allows people to like the videos that's doing that, and maybe you suppress those videos and raise up other videos. The problem I have with this is under the Obama administration, Obama, when they were talking about do you remember I think it was called the Afghanistan Files by the Washington Post? And in the Afghanistan Files, they were going through the Iraq War, Afghanistan War, the surge, and all that stuff. And they were doing this thing called lesson learned, and they were trying to figure out what happened. And they were talking behind the scenes to generals and people within the context of the military. They never thought the information would get out. So they're having almost like private conversations that were recorded and eventually was outed. When they got to Obama, they were talking about how Obama was cherry picking so much information and data, and that he had mixed that stuff around, that there was no way to use any of the information that Obama was putting out to get any semblance of reality of what was taking place on the ground during his quote unquote surge. They just made it up. And so when he's saying, yeah, we need to, be more specific with facts that I prefer, that Biden prefers, that Kamala Harris prefers, those type of facts, not reality. Meaning they're talking about something very different things. They're not talking about reality. They're talking about something that, let's say, fulfills the obligation of government. But they need to be careful with that because Trump is in now, and he is doing the same thing with his quote unquote facts in order to back up the, tariffs are going to bring us $1 trillion. We're going to pay down the deficit with tariffs. We've gotten the inflation has gone down. Like these things are just blunt lies. They're drug cartels that are bringing drugs in, which is why we're murdering people. And every boat that we kill saves 200,000 Americans. Okay, anybody can play that game of quote unquote facts. Give me your take on that. I find it disturbing, frankly.
Facts such as Susan Rice, one of his assistants, saying that the Libyan government was giving their troops Viagra so they could rape women. Those kind of facts. Here's the bottom line. It was nothing but a pack of lies. There was not an element of truth. There was not an element of honesty in anything that Barack Obama said. These are the people that lie us into war over and over. You know, the foundation of his argument here was that the ruling elite, that the political class value truth and honesty and accuracy. And he's having a discussion of how they can get truth and honesty and accuracy and goodness. You know, we don't want hateful speech. No, they don't want hateful speech. Such as somebody saying I'm opposed to genocide. We can't have that kind of hateful speech. We got to stop people from doing things like that. Such as somebody writing an article a year ago that says, hey, you know, perhaps the Palestinians aren't getting the best treatment they could get. Oh, we got to throw that person out of the country. That's hateful speech. So the truth is, it's nothing but a pack of lies. The idea that Obama and the people that he represents are concerned with accuracy and facts. Where are they right now with these lies about drug boats and lies about Donald Trump? We'll read in the same article, Donald Trump is going after drug dealers and drug traffickers. And then a couple paragraphs down, it'll say, but really, you know, he really wants to oust Maduro and do a coup. So they'll like lie in the beginning of the article. I've seen articles, and then further down and basically say, well, you know, it's all a pack of lies. Really, we just want to steal the oil, but we're okay with that. So the truth is that everything he says is lies. And it's simply what he's really saying is this. We want to control the conversation and the narrative because people are on to us. It's not working anymore. They're hip to us. They don't believe us anymore. They know we're lying. And we got people pointing at it saying, yeah, there's something fishy about what the hell is some guy taking guns apart, changing clothes 4 times? That doesn't make sense. And I don't know what it is, but your story doesn't make sense anymore. They're sick and tired of that. They want to be able to suppress it. And in order to suppress it, they got to give us the same pack of lies that they got to feed us in order to go invade a country and steal the oil. And Obama is just a spokesman for liars and the ruling elite and those who wish to control us. It's the same conversation we're having about a bunch of goons coming on the street grabbing Americans. So we'll get accustomed to it. So when they come grab us, we'll be like, well, at least I guess they're trying to protect us, right? It's the same crackdown physically on people who are pushing back against the government, crackdown rhetorically about people who are saying things they don't want. We got to shut it down online. He wants what they're doing in the UK, where if someone says, hey, I'm opposed to the genocide, and they do a tweet, we can arrest them and lock them up.
Yep. Trump in Russia. Obama was the guy that got rid of, what is the name of the law? It was the one that disallowed propaganda to be used on American soil. Obama got rid of it.
Smith-Munson Act or something like that.
That's it. Yes. Like, that's what I mean, right? It's like, this is the same guy who's now saying, yeah, we have to be concerned about facts and opinion, and you know, there should be facts and opinion, and the government needs to get involved in making sure that facts are facts. Okay, so you want a ministry of truth, which is effectively what Joe Biden tried to do. That's amazing. Like, there is a reason why we have a First Amendment in this country. And for all of its failures or for all of its weaknesses, there is something to be said about the ability for people to be able to point out that the government is full of shit. And, you know, whether that's under Obama, that people didn't necessarily want to do, especially Black people at the time, or whether that's under Trump, who people find it easier to do, or under Joe Biden, where, again, liberals didn't necessarily want to put out that the president was out of his mind. Like, I find that to be disturbing. It's one thing if you trust your government, right? Like, if you had a government that was credible, honest, trustworthy, then you wouldn't need this law. And the fact of the matter is, or this government intrusion, this intervention, the reason that Alex Jones exists is because the government has fundamentally lost credibility. And the same thing with mainstream media. That's not something that Alex Jones did. That's something that media and the government did, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And who decides if it's a fact? You know what I mean? We've heard this term facts used in the most abstract way over the last, I don't know how many, all through Ukraine or whatever. They're spreading propaganda. If you remember this, they even came up with, they had misinformation, malinformation. And we're like, what the hell's we remember we covered this as Sputnik. What the hell is malinformation? It's things that are true, but they mislead people. We're like, well, if they're true, how the hell do they mislead people? Either they're true or they're false. So we've even come to the point where who decides what the hell are facts? They got to take things that are true. They said we had to be shut down because we were spreading Russian misinformation, and we're not Russian. And we haven't stopped saying the same damn things we said when we were on the air. And so it was Russian misinformation, even though it wasn't coming from Russians. It wasn't even about Russia. It was about America, etc. And they've decided what are facts. So we've got to separate from facts and opinions. You mean your Wall Street owners and at Citibank that named your cabinet, Barack Obama? That's the we you're talking about? I'll put it like this. It would be like me saying, I'm going to really got to do there's a list of things we have to do to stop banks from being robbed. Oh, really, Garland? What have you been doing your whole life, robbing banks? Well, I really don't think that you're coming up with these ideas. What are you going to do? Well, first of all, we've got to get rid of security in banks. Yeah. They don't need security. Next, we got to leave the doors unlocked and a map in every bank that points you right to the vault where all the money is. Well, that'll stop banks from things. I'm a bank robber. He's a liar. He's a thief. He's a murderer and a criminal. And I'm supposed to believe that he's trying to stop lies and thievery and murders and criminality. What a joke.
Yeah. I mean, and let's be honest, right? Obama was the one with the kill list, right? He was the one that was killing Americans. And now Trump is doing it. And people are like, oh my God, I can't believe Donald Trump is doing it. Dude, Obama had a literal kill list. And then they made the argument that, well, what is it? Due process doesn't necessarily require the judicial branch. It can take place in the executive branch. Eric Holder made that argument. I nearly fell out my chair when he said that. I was like, whoa, really? I wasn't even heavily into politics, and I nearly fell out my chair. Really? Does that work that way? Yeah, that's an amazing thing. So this is now what? This is going to be the Democratic platform. Liberals love this, by the way. You heard them applaud. Oh, yeah. They were like, our facts need to be the things that are, enshrined into whatever governmental apparatus that you guys are trying to come up with. That is disturbing to me. They have missed the boat big time. They have jumped the shark. What they don't get is that their issue, if you were honest with the public, you wouldn't have had this issue. Meaning, if the public, like when you tell the public that weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, when you tell the public Trump is working with the Russians, when you tell the public this is an unprovoked war of aggression in Ukraine, when you tell the public 9/11 was or let's say you don't have a real investigation. I don't know if you've seen the Tucker Carlson thing on 9/11.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I knew a lot of that stuff already. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
When you see that and you think to yourself, okay, so these people are just liars. And we're supposed to trust these liars to come up with an apparatus to give the public truthful data. No, nobody's going to accept that.
But it makes sense, though. It makes sense. Let me just say this. That's why they have to play this game. And that's what they do all over the world. Yes, we're coming to bring peace to this country when they're really coming to overthrow. We're bringing democracy to this country when they're really not doing the opposite. Like countries that literally, as an example, Maduro was elected in an open and honest election. And the government, the U.S. government says, oh, he stole it.
Yep.
But all of the evidence says he didn't, and the people there say he didn't, and everybody who's been there that's looked at their electoral process says their electoral process is certainly clean, and all the numbers say, he stole it. That's okay. They still got lots of oil, so he stole it. Yep. So they don't care about that. It's just such a clown show we're looking at. And they have to do this because when you lie that much, you got to stop people from pointing out you're lying if you have the power to do it, and that's all it is.
Right there. It's right there. Your government is coming apart at the seams, so you need to find a way to keep it together because people realize, okay, these people are liars, in which case people go into their own bubbles of reality. And so I get why he's saying, he's like, hey, people are in their own bubbles of reality. It's hard to have a government that's cohesive when everybody's attuned to different items of what's true and what's false. Yeah, that's true. That's fair enough, right? But You guys did that. Bill, I mean, what? It was Bill Clinton that got rid of the Telecommunications Act that had to have equal time for the various people on the media and everything else. Like, these were things that the government itself did. And we have an individualistic country that we pride ourselves on being individualists. Okay, well, some of these things are consequences of it. Last thing, when are you guys cutting my government back on? When are the lights coming back on to the government? At some point, I'm going to need to fly back into the States, and I would prefer to have competent air traffic controllers, not just people, with a call sign saying, "Hey, call back later. Nobody's here." When is this taking place? Because it doesn't seem like there's any movement, any motion. It doesn't seem like anybody cares that the government is cut off. It just is off. There's no leverage. There's no momentum. There's no nothing. I see no energy behind the government being brought back to existence.
Yeah, who knows? But if this, to me, this is another perfect example of the incompetency and the just the breakdown of politics in the U.S. You're telling, well, the Russians, you got to do this. You're telling the Chinese, you got to do this. Iranians, you got to do this. You're telling everybody how they got to run their government, right? It's like me saying, Jamal, you're not running your home and your kids and your family and this and that and all, going around the neighborhood pointing out to everybody, you're not cutting your grass enough. You're not doing this. And my lights are turned off, my water's turned off, my grass is 3 feet high, and everybody looks at my house and says, your house is a shambles. Your whole family hates you. They're all, your wife just left with the kids and they're living in a shelter somewhere,
Cool, man. Yeah.
That's fired, your whole life is a disaster. And you're going around telling everybody in the community how to run their lives. And that's where we are. We can, if you think about it, let's simplify it. Our government can't even keep the lights on. Our government can't even pay the most basic bills, and the most basic job they have is to keep the lights on in their own home, and they can't even do that. And there is no, I can't look in the future and say when they'll be able to do it. They're so corrupt. Meanwhile, you're giving $40 billion away to this lunatic Malay just because he's willing to hand over his country to Wall Street. But $40 billion to him. People can't eat here. Homeless people wander in the streets like zombies. You can't keep the lights on, but you're handing money to everybody all around the world, but yet you can't even pay your most basic bills at home. The dysfunction in this government, I don't know if they'll ever come back, if they'll ever get them back in. Because it's so dysfunctional, they can't do the most basic things. It makes sense if you're looking at this clown show on Capitol Hill. I mean, when I look at the Republicans, I don't know what the hell they're wandering around talking about. I look at Hakeem Jeffries. Have you ever looked at the looks on his face lately? It's like this. They're like, what do you think about Israel, this and that? And he just kind of goes. He don't know what to say. He has no answer. Like, geez, Israel, I better not say anything about that. What about the midterms? Oh, we're totally screwed. I don't know. You look at the looks on these, they're like just like slobbering. They look like Joe Biden. When you would like see these pictures with Joe Biden and everybody's dancing around him and then Joe Biden's like this.
Yeah, just out of it.
He is the perfect example of the Democratic Party, period. They're just standing there drooling, standing off with no idea what to do, stumbling into the midterms. And no idea that the bottom line is this. Why would they push back on the Republicans? They don't disagree with them on anything of substance. Maybe like some issues of trans bathrooms or something like that they may be upset about. But the issues of substance, they don't really give a crap. They're just trying to survive and maybe get their paychecks another 6 months.
Yeah, it's like we'll go to the mat for trans kids that have surgeries at 14 years old. Yeah, it's wild to me. It's like Trump doesn't care. He is oblivious. He's going to Busan, Seoul to talk.
Build the ballroom, man. Build the ballroom.
He's building a ballroom, for God's sake.
Now the Democrats are mad about that. They're opposed to that. He's building a ballroom and he's going to name it the Trump room. How dare he? Now they'll get upset about that. Now if he invades Venezuela, but don't build a ballroom. That'll really piss the Democrats off.
By the way, invading Venezuela with a military that's not being paid because the government is not on.
And you only could put together about 15,000 troops to invade a country the size of France and Germany combined.
Yeah, it's just outrageous. Garland, man, you have my appreciation. I always enjoy talking to you. I always enjoy when you come on the show. And I have Garland Nixon He's a radio host, political analyst. He has his own YouTube channel, The Garland Nixon Show. Definitely check him out. He does shows all the time, and he has fantastic guests. Garland, when is your next show, by the way? Just so the audience will know to look for.
I don't know, because I'm kind of busy. I try to at least get one show a day right now, because I'm getting my visa stuff together to go to Russia, and that's a pain in the neck. And I got
you?
Yes, I'm supposed to go on the 6th through the 16th, but it's a pain in the neck getting the visa, so I'm trying to do that. And then
is it an event? Or is it
some journalism event where I get to do interviews and stuff. It's supposed to be
congratulations,
whatever Larry
man.
Johnson is doing there right now. I'm supposed to do the same kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to that. And of course, I sold like my house and my property, and I got to be out by December 17th. So I'm packing and moving.
So
I'm just a little bit busy these days. I'll just say that, a little bit, but I'm still managing to get in at least try kind of a show a day.
Well, congratulations on the Russia thing.
Unless the aliens get us from 3-Eye Atlas.
I don't know what that is. So I know they be calling it that. Look, the 3-Eye Atlas thing, no BS, is very weird. From my point of view, I know Avi Loeb has been on the show. He's been making the argument. He's been very pissed off because people have been like, "Why is Avi Loeb calling this thing a UFO?" People took issue because Avi Loeb had insinuated that this could be like an alien weapon. And it's like, dude, where are you getting this from, right? It is very weird for something to come outside of our galaxy and to have this kind of steep curve where it's going past the inner planets and then ducking behind the sun on his way out. So it's almost like if you had to build something to spy on Earth and to spy on the inner planets around the solar system, this would be perfect for it.
Yeah. Well, I think it flies by and they go, yeah, let's take a look at Earth. Ooh, yeah, no, that's probably not a good idea. We'll just leave. Holy crap. Yeah. Let's get out. I don't know about you. One alien's like, I don't know about you. I say we get the hell out of here as quickly as possible. Good idea.
Well, that's the rub, though, right? Like, even if you had, let's say, a group of benevolent aliens, whatever that means, benevolence, right? Just because a group may be neutral doesn't necessarily mean that neutrality is in your interest or outside of your interest. But let's say benevolent. Let's say Star Trek-esque in the way that the Federation operates. How would they ever work with Earth? Like, how could you really ever engage this planet in a way where you're not going to be seen as being duplicitous? You're seen as being, that you're scheming, you're distrusted. Like, there's no way for us to trust and for us to engage something like that in a way that would be to our benefit in a direct sense. So
I think they're already here in one sense, and they're wandering around doing all kinds of stuff. Look, they're already all over the place. Every time you turn around, somebody's seeing them fly by, underwater, going fast. They're all over the place.
Oh, I believe that
we know there's aliens everywhere around here. I believe that.
I am a firm believer, right?
Yeah.
Believer in this sense. It's just, there are abductee reports that are interesting. There are the crop circle stuff. Some of them are interesting. Some, it depends on which crop circles, right? There are questions of where they come from. I had Lou Elizondo. I interviewed Lou Elizondo when Elizondo came out. And I remember asking him, like, these tiny crafts that we're seeing, obviously, they're not coming from another planet with a craft that small. Where is this coming from? Now, Lou, in many cases, didn't want to answer some of these questions because Lou was like, look, I'm under federal, I could be arrested and they could put me in a cage. Some of the stuff I just can't answer that you're asking me, right? And he was like, yeah, that's a good question. But what it implies is infrastructure, that there's infrastructure already here. It's not like somebody's in a tiny craft and they're flying from, I don't know, some random place to get to Earth. They're most likely here. They're most likely bases that are already localized in various parts around the planet. And so when you're seeing like small craft and stuff like that, and those things are coming out of the ocean, that is kind of a heads up like, hey, we're already here, buddy. And not just already here, there's infrastructure that's already built on this planet that would allow them to persist here. They may not necessarily be coming from some random place at every moment that somebody sees a craft. Now, I think it's far more in depth than that. And the government knows more than what they're implying. But are they going to tell us? And would you believe them if they did?
Yeah, of course, just like the old Romulans cloaking device. If they're technology is so much far ahead of ours as it appears, they would likely have the ability to, and I'll use this word, to cloak their infrastructure, to block it so that whatever our sonar, I would suspect maybe some of it's underwater, who knows where it is, but to block it so that we are unable to, to see it with any of the equipment that they have. So it could be very close. It could be all around us and we don't, it could be cloaked from our ability to see it. It could be interdimensional where they store it in another dimension, in and out of the dimensions. You know what I mean? So who knows?
Yeah.
But I think I'm with you. I think they're already here.
By the way, that's the other rub. We don't know, like it could be a quirk of physics that allows them to do what they do. Like meaning manipulation of gravity, for example. Like, for example, when David Fravor and Dietrich were the pilots that were on the Nimitz video, where the thing came out the water and shot up, the radar hit it, called in the airplanes came in. Fravor was flying on 9/11, so Fravor is like beyond impeachable in regards to his credibility. They see it, they zero in on it, and Fravor is watching this thing for like 5 minutes. And he decides, I'm going to turn in on the craft because he didn't know what it was. He was like, I have no idea what that thing is. And as he turns in on it, within a split second, the thing shoots off. Just within like a blink of an eye, it's just gone. And Fravor is sitting there like, what the F just happened? Like he's just mind blown at this point, right? The radar picks it up in the area where Fravor was supposed to go, let's say at the end of the mission or in the case of an emergency. So it ends up going to a location that's supposed to be this kind of secret location where he is supposed to be. And again, all of this stuff is blowing Fravor's mind. Fravor comes out, Dietrich comes out, both of them sit there and talk about what they saw, what they experienced. You have radar data, you have all of the stuff associated with it. You have people who are on the boat who saw this thing came out of the water. And so if you're looking for any case that is like, I only need one, that would be the case. That would be the case. Like there's so much data associated with this particular case, and you have so many people who that were either in the air, on the boat. You have people who work with Bob Bigelow. Bigelow was one of the people who worked with ATIP. That was the program that was under. Okay, this is getting too much information. I'm sorry. I'm geeking out.
I love that stuff. We need to do a show then. We need to do a show where we talk UFOs and stuff like that. Or UAVs or whatever they're called. I love that stuff, man. I'm convinced. To me, it's the data set is overwhelming. I mean, it's not even to me a discussion anymore for someone to say that these things don't exist. We could argue about where they come from and all that, but it's obvious these are non-human occurrences. Yeah, and they appear to be monitoring us, monitoring nuclear sites. They know what the hell we're doing. I think they're listening to pretty much what we're doing, kind of like an ant farm.
If you listen,
they're looking at it like an ant farm.
I don't know if you've seen, if you've ever read David Jacobs. Jacobs goes into this idea of hybridization. Oh, that stuff gets terrifying. Jacobs is terrifying. His books are getting more terrifying as he gets older. It's like The Threat. It's like the title, just The Threat. It's fascinating. Garland, man, I love it when you come on. I love these conversations. I swear to God, I do. Thank you for this. You be safe, okay?
All right, thank you. Talk to you soon.